Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I want to talk about what happens to your ex when you go no contact, but specifically if your ex is anxiously preoccupied in terms of their attachment style. This video will also be really beneficial if you are anxious preoccupied and you see somebody else going no contact after you've broken up with them, just for sort of the awareness of how you'll respond, some patterns that can emerge, and what you can do about some of these patterns as a whole. I do have a video that I'll be creating about how different attachment styles handle breakups as well in the future as well. So stay tuned for that. I just noticed, I think I said as well like 4 times in a row. I've had a long, busy day. I also have a whole bunch of Q&As coming out tomorrow in a long form video, just from inside our community and school. That's sort of webinar style video. So stay tuned for that as well. Anyways, I'm going to go through some of the things that will happen with the anxious preoccupied, how long it will take for them to process emotions when they're being given the no contact, and what sort of the optimal times are for this to take place. But I also want to give a bit of a warning that, if the anxious preoccupied individual, because they are the least likely to deactivate, if they do the breaking up, they're also the least likely to be open or interested in getting back together in a relationship beyond this like early peak point. And if they are interested, it's usually because of emotional triggering, not necessarily because it's their truth. So I'm going to go through like how to differentiate that and when is an actually appropriate time to think about revisiting the relationship so that you're not sort of falling back into those same cycles if the anxious preoccupied is your ex. Okay, so before I dive into that, super quick, we are doing scholarship offers inside the school right now. We're doing as much as we can to support our community. I know this is a challenging time. I know people are feeling isolated, but people are getting so much out of our webinars and connection, and it's just so beautiful to watch. So if you're interested, we have 25% off bundles for 3-month, 6-month, or 12-month memberships. I think 9-month or 8-month as well. And there's a coupon code in the description box below that's with you, all one word. And it will help you to get that discount now. Or if you're in further financial troubles, please reach out to my team. And we're working things out with people, helping people in any form possible to help you have a sense of contact and community during this time. And it's also a great time to learn as much about yourself as possible while you're kind of like in quarantine or isolated in a relationship to yourself. It's the most beautiful time to do self-development work. So I hope to see you inside of our community, and thanks for being here watching the YouTube videos in the first place as well. So let me go through this. When the anxious preoccupied individual breaks up with another person, and you're talking about, okay, I'm going to go no contact, and I'm going to go no contact. This is something so interesting. It's like some people will go, I'm going to do no contact for 30 days. If you do no contact for 30 days with your anxious preoccupied ex, just so everybody knows, it's probably going to backfire completely, because the anxious usually processes their feelings of the breakup immediately, like super processes them. By 2 weeks, they've started to turn a corner. And by 4 weeks, they're way less likely to be interested in a relationship. I will repeat again, and I'll probably say this another time in this video. When the anxious does the breaking up, because it's not like, sometimes fearful avoidance or dismissive avoidance do breaking up because they're triggered. Attachment trauma patterns are activated. Fears are coming up, and they have competing needs. And so they run away as this like protective mechanism. And sometimes in different dynamics, when we have tools to deal with that, when we learn about attachment styles, we learn how to communicate, these can be quite solvable problems. With the anxious, because they're so highly unlikely to really deactivate, usually when they've made their decision, it's a lot more final. And so unless you're revisiting this relationship like a year later when you both have grown and had all this time apart and kind of healed and moved on, and it's like a reset button on the relationship, I really don't advise that you get back together or try to do no contact as a means of getting back together with your anxious ex, as this like strategy to like sort of make this work. They will, for people who are like, I need to see this out, you will see like the anxious preoccupied person really suffer the most the first 1 to 2 weeks, and up to 3 to 4 weeks as well. And this is going to depend the length of that really strong pain point of suffering. So like if you go no contact, for example, and they reach out and you don't answer, it's going to activate them, and they are going to go through the different stages of response to no contact. They will have that like regret and remorse and self-doubt and questioning their decision. They will have it. But even if they do, it's going to be more of a reflection of their core wounds being triggered, like their fears of abandonment, being alone, being excluded, disliked, not good enough, these things being triggered that are causing them to have that needy streak or that desire to really reach out and connect, it's going to be a lot more of those things than the actual, like if you could peel back all those core wounds and layers, it's more about those wounds than the actual underlying factor being that they made the wrong decision and they're truly interested in the relationship. Because remember, they're not like doing this out of some, it's sort of like if the anxious does the breaking up, it's that much more serious because it wasn't about this like triggered pattern and an emotional decision. It was more like they had to even be willing to put themselves through their fears and wounds of abandonment and being not good enough and disliked and all these things in order to do the breaking up, which means they're usually that much more serious by the time they reach that point. And so that's something that's really important for you to recognize, because if you're looking at this video or any of you now, sometimes partners do get their anxious ex mixed up with fearful avoidant. Sometimes somebody seems anxious and then they're actually super fearful avoidant beneath the surface. A lot of individuals who are fearful avoidant that I've met and worked with one-on-one often think they're anxious first and then end up being like, oh yeah, I do have all these deactivating strategies and these protest behaviors are, a lot more emotionally volatile. And there will be characteristics where they start to recognize that avoidance side, especially when they're paired with somebody who's a little more anxious. So that has a different connotation. In that case, go watch the no contact with the fearful avoidant ex video. But if you're thinking of going, oh my gosh, okay, I know now, like 1 to 2 weeks, that's the best time to go no contact. And at the end of 2 weeks, break that cycle, reach out to the partner. That's when they're the most vulnerable and likely to get back. If you're doing that, you're probably going to hurt yourself a little bit, because you're probably going to end up in the same pattern or relationship with the person who's not fully present or fully interested at their deeper layers in being with you and in connecting and communicating. They obviously have things that they think are unworkable or non-negotiable in the relationship to have done the pullback to that degree or the breakup in the first place. Okay. So what is impacted by the pattern is if the anxious preoccupied, so let's say you are the anxious person instead, and you're like, and somebody's doing no contact to you after you ended the relationship, and you're like, ouch, this is hurting, what's going to happen? A few things you should know is that if you're working on yourself and you're getting better at your boundaries, you're getting better at sourcing and meeting your own needs, you're getting better at balancing all the 7 areas of life, then anxious preoccupied individuals tend to process more like a secure person as long as they don't reach out to their ex. So if this is you and you're considering reaching out to your ex, if you do, you're just more likely to re-trigger all of those attachment wounds and traumas, because if they don't respond and they're doing no contact, or they don't respond the way you hope or expect because maybe they're hurt or in pain, then you're just going to feel abandoned again, and you're going to get blurred lines between what you want to relieve the pain versus what your truth is in the situation. Now, in some cases, the anxious partner does break up, does have a change of heart, and it does work. The relationship can be rekindled. It's very rare. Okay. So the things you're looking for, if again, now you're not the anxious, this person's the anxious ex, the things you're looking for is that they show up, they take accountability. Like let's say you do no contact and it works. So you don't do contact, and then at the 2-week mark or 3-week or 4-week mark, you break it, depending on how anxious they are. The more anxious they are, basically the longer they're going to be stuck in that sort of space. So let's say then you do break no contact and you do communicate with them and have a conversation, and they're like, these were my faults, these are my flaws, I'm willing to work on this, I was wrong about my decision to break up because of this and this reason, I don't want to lose this relationship. And they show up and they're clear and they're concise and they're well thought out, and they're willing to own their part and they're willing to put in the work, and they're also urging you and encouraging you to do the same. It's not just like, let me submit and just go back into unhealthy patterns. It's like a collaborative discussion that's really conscious and intentional. That might be a different story. Then you can reconsider the boundaries and the dynamics in the situation. But I just, and the other dynamic that I will see is if you rekindle years later. So sometimes I've seen a couple with an anxious partner break up, and then they sort of like rekindle a year later or 2 years later. They're different people. If they've had like little to no contact that whole time, they're usually different people. Really, a long-term breakup like that is a reset button on a relationship. But it's not a reset button if you're chatting every day or once or twice a week and there are feelings and you're still seeing each other and maybe sleeping together, or like these different patterns that I do see anxious individuals often partaking in. if there isn't this like very long, at least like 8 or 9 month space of seriously not communicating and not being in like an intimate connection sort of space with the person, or with, you know, a relationship with lots of question marks in your friendship, you know, that doesn't, you know, if you're not doing that, you're probably not at a full reset. And so you're likely to re-enter into the same patterns. So some things you can ask yourself if the anxious ex does return are, what are your boundaries? And if you want to get back together, what are your non-negotiables with this person? Okay, you might hear from this person. You're likely to hear, if the anxious preoccupied does the breaking up and you go no contact, you're honestly likely to hear from them at like week 1 at one point, week 2. Like you'll probably hear from them multiple times within the first month, especially in the early stages. And they might do things that are reaching out to see that you're still there, like, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? These different things. And they look like a lot of the time they're checking on you, but usually they're looking to see that the connection is still there. And it's their own sort of satisfaction they can be getting out of this in the process, looking to see, you know, just looking to talk, connect, be in that space. And that might be something that is very confusing and is very challenging for the partner, right? It can be really hard to be the partner, the ex in a situation, who is like, wait, I'm trying to get over you. Are you here? Are you not? Remember, it's quite common that the anxious preoccupied gets triggered in those stages, in the very early weeks. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're looking to get back together. In fact, out of all attachment styles, they're probably the least likely to get back together from that perspective. So I hope this is helpful. I do have a course coming out in April, so very, very soon, about how to heal from a breakup in great detail. And we talk about no contact in this course, and the different types of attachment styles and the responses to breakup, and sort of a clearing process to process a lot of that breakup trauma out of your subconscious mind and nervous system. So stay tuned for that as well. And in terms of your healing, if you're going through a breakup for now, please make sure you focus on you and your healing first. Please make sure that you tune into you first. You don't make this about like the other person and how to get them back and win them back. Tune into you, show up for your boundaries. And if something's meant to be, that's your best chance at rekindling a relationship, is you showing up for yourself first. So thank you for watching. I hope you like, share, and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next video.